How's it going, ladies and Bruce's up? I'll be Sixkilla and welcome back to Ever 17. Sorry about that glow that keeps coming in. I keep forgetting to close the freaking curtains. My studio lights aren't doing that. That's the sun. Anyway, I think we're just about to see, well, we just about saw the end of Takeshi's, or the 2017 incident, from kids' perspective in 2034 or whatever. But we are back now in the 2034 time, I think. Well, it's hard to keep track now. At the same time, I woke up suddenly. Lemoo's infirmary. I'd been sprawled out, sleeping on the bed. Getting up, I looked around. Nobody was there. I felt a pain in my left hand, and looked at my palm. There was a large bandage on the edge of it. That's right, I'd injured my hand in the whale room, and then I'd lost my memory again, and was probably brought to this room. Where is everyone? I slowly got off the bed and slipped on my shoes. We lost our memory again? That's not good. The sound of metal screeching and rubbing together came from somewhere in the immediate vicinity. Another sound came to my ears, and I could tell if it was an alarm ringing somewhere far off, but strangely, I didn't feel any fear. I must not be completely awake. Inside my head was still dim, and it was hard to grasp the situation completely. Just then, the door to the infirmary opened. Kid, you jumped into the room, as though she were possessed by a demon. I found an exit we can escape through. You was screaming. I found an exit. I said these words to myself over and over. It took me a few seconds to grasp the enormity of those words. Where'd you find it? My mind was still not fully up and running. I'll explain later, just hurry. Saying that, you ran out of the infirmary. Still, it took a few more seconds for my legs to get moving. It felt as though I were running on fog. My body was half paralyzed and wouldn't move in the directions I wanted it. I shook my head, trying to get rid of the grogginess. No matter how much I ran, I couldn't return to normal. Where is everyone else? I was barely able to hold on to my consciousness as I somehow got this question off to you. Takeshi's going to get Mayor, and Tsugumi's already in the emergency corridor. Takeshi's going to get Mayor? Tsugumi's in the emergency corridor. For no reason in particular, I repeated Yu's words. Maybe she finally noticed my odd state. Yu looked at me suspiciously. We made it to the emergency corridor. Kaburaki, Tsugumi, and Sara were already there waiting. Hurry, we didn't have much time. Not much time? Just hurry! Kaburaki grabbed my shoulder hard and turning around started running. Sara and Tsugumi followed Kaburaki's lead. Listen up. Lemur started to implode. We were finally able to make contact with the surface and access the emergency stairs. But if we don't hurry, they're gonna flood. So hurry. He grabbed my arm tightly, and tugging on it violently, he started pounding forward at full speed. It felt like I was about to fall forward, and I braced myself as best I could, trying to keep pace with her as she pulled me forward. We flew like a wind down the painfully cramped passage, and soon, we'd all jammed into the emergency exit stairwell. We were running up the stairs. I could hear Kaburaki, Sara, and Tsugumi, their footsteps right above me. Hurry up this way. I couldn't see from where Kaburaki was calling, but his booming voice thundered off the sides of the metal bulkhead. Yu's eyes met mine, and nodding to one another, we pumped our legs harder, climbing as fast as we could. The surface of the stairs was wet. The metal tubing surrounding us in the emergency staircase was shaking violently left and right. I slipped and whacked my shin hard against a corner, but I felt nothing. Both of my legs kept moving, as if they were separate from me. My thoughts and feelings were indistinct, vague. An irresistible primal force was propelling me forward, and I handed over the reins to that force. I was in a state almost free of thought. All I could do was climb and climb and keep climbing. A sharp metallic sound echoed painfully in my ears. The angry cacophony shook my body to its core. It was the screaming of a terrible monster, or the groan of death itself. The terrible voice was slowly and certainly closing in on us from behind. Just a little more, we're almost there. Kaburaki screamed at us from up above. I briefly saw the backs of Sara and Tsugumi who were running ahead. The meaning of Kaburaki's words, just a little more, hit me. Just a little more and we can escape from here. From the bottom of the deep ocean, from out of that cage we were trapped in. We're finally getting out. We're going to be free. But along with that hope, an indistinct fear was still inside of me. A heavy, dark sensation wriggling at the center of my body. It was rotten, filthy. It had stuck to the walls of my heart, stagnant and putrid. It doesn't matter. Even if you get out of here, nothing will have been solved. And as the doubts went through my mind, my legs faltered. 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps. I carried forward and the doubts swelled up, replacing my elation at rescue. You really think you're going to be let out of here? And as this thought filled my mind, I'd already arrived at the last step in front of the door. Nobody said a word. We wiped our sweat and struggled for breath as we glared at the huge door which rose before us. Alright, let's go. Put my hand on the door's lever. The door unlocked. Embracing my chest and shoulder against the door, I threw all my weight into opening it. Outside of the door, the stars that greeted us was a sky filled with... The sight that greeted us was a sky filled with stars. Covering the dark blue sky above was an infinite number of shimmering stars. Beyond time and beyond space, the light poured down gently on our heads from above. All of us, me, you, Sada, Tsugumi, and Kaburaki had lost all words. We could only stare at the sky above. If I raised my hand, it seemed I could touch the sky. But not there, because it was a real night sky. In this way, the drama of our escape ended. Or at least so it seemed, but I realized nothing had been solved. The slimy sense of unease still gnawed inside of me. And that indistinct notion had changed to a shimmering sense of impatience. One that was ready to boil. That's right, it isn't finished. I'm not going to let it end here. Because I don't know the reasons behind any of this. The time was 11:43 p.m. A new day was just waiting to begin. Dawn. It was the middle of a white darkness. Before I knew it, I had become lost in another world. I didn't even have time to wonder where I was before I found the answer. The year was 2017. I could see it. I could see everything. I already knew what had happened at that time. Takeshi. Takeshi, get up. The taxi's here. Oh yeah. Takeshi jumped out of bed and stood up. He stretched his arms and loosened his shoulders. Takeshi and Tsugumi were still stuck in the examination room of the research facility. Charmy, come here. Come on, we gotta get going now. Tsugumi scooped up Charmy, who had been running around on the floor, and held him to her chest. Huh? Stooping down, Tsugumi let out a cry of alarm. What's wrong, Tsugumi? Takeshi, under the bed. Under the bed? Mine? He looked under the bed he'd been sleeping on. Something was lying there. Reaching out, he pulled whatever it was closer to him. Huh? Pee-Pee? Hey, Pee-Pee, what's going on? What are you doing here? Takeshi picked Pee-Pee up in both hands and shook him lightly. There was no response, and all the colour had vanished from his eyes. He didn't move at all. Pee-Pee was frozen, as if he were dead. Suddenly, a faded fragment of a memory appeared in the back of my mind. Although it had been weathered and tinged by a flow of time, it was a scene that I was positive I knew. It was a scrap of a conversation between Sara and Yubisei Akikana. But really, that Connie, I tell you, that robot dog looks so much like the real thing that I bet he is treating it like a normal pet. Hey, did you have a robotic dog at your house? Yep, sure do. Actually, it's my mum's though. I think it's one of those really old types. It just keeps ticking along happily, it never breaks. If they were talking about Pee-Pee, that would mean Pee-Pee was a robot, an electronic dog. There wasn't any proof, but looking at Pee-Pee's motionless body, it was obvious that it wasn't the dead body of an animal. Like a wind-up toy that had stopped moving, Pee-Pee's limbs had frozen in an unnatural position. Takeshi and Tsugumi both observed Pee-Pee, who had become nothing more than a broken toy. Takeshi opened his mouth slightly. It seemed like he was about to say something. Suddenly, with a roaring sound, the whole room shook violently. Takeshi's body flipped like a small twig and flew into the wall. Tsugumi tumbled and danced through the air, to fall on the floor with a thud. 5 minutes. Hey, what did that announcement just say? Holding Pee-Pee under his arm, Takeshi looked up at the ceiling. Tsugumi quickly got up. We got 5 minutes until this place implodes. 5 minutes? Give me a break. What are they going to tell us when there's only 5 minutes left? Give us some more warning for crying out loud. Anyway, we've only got 5 minutes. Tsugumi shrugged his shoulders exaggeratedly and stared at Takeshi. You've got to accept reality. You could learn something from me, you know. Listen to yourself, Tsugumi. Telling jokes at a time like this is more my style, don't you think? Well, I guess you're right. But we should be okay if we've got 5 minutes, right? A smile floated to her lips and Tsugumi held out a hand to Takeshi. Of course. Takeshi took her hand firmly. 4 minutes until implosion. I continued to observe. I accepted the world as it was, understood it, and input it. I had no feelings. Feelings seemed to me to be something people give out in a response to the world, as a way of igniting change in their surroundings. But at that time I had no physical body. I had no hands, nor feet, no voice, no lungs, no organs for generating heat. In other words, I had no way of interacting with the world. Therefore, even if I were to have emotions, there was nothing I could do with them. The only thing I could do was watch. What's more, the act of watching was much different than what was normally associated with sight. This type of vision went far beyond feelings or thought. It was completely isolated, completely removed. The passage of time had condensed down to one moment, and that had been exploded in front of me. I had seen everything in one instant. One instant. Standing still, I saw a world where time had stopped. I saw everything. Yes, at least something's going right. The taxi's even waiting for us. Well, of course. It's a taxi. They aren't going to leave us high-tipping customers here. In front of them, the small submarine bobbed gently in the waves. 3 minutes until implosion. Only 3 minutes left. Takeshi and Tsugumi hurriedly scrambled onto the sub and jumped down the hatch. Tsugumi slid over the driver's side with the cockpit, checking to see if the gauges were in order, and flipped some switches. The hatch overhead closed automatically. Tsugumi took the controls. The mini-sub made bubbling sounds and sunk quickly into the water. As soon as they passed into the bottom of IBF, the ocean current pushed on the heavy hull of the vessel. Takeshi looked out into the ocean from a small window attached to the wall. Lamu was breaking apart. The frame started to warp and fold on itself, like some crumpled old newspaper. Partitions cracked into small pieces and flooded in the water as if they were petals falling from a flower. Letting out its final breath, Lamu spewed out fine air bubbles into the sea, which flowed gently into the current. From the twisted wreckage, black smoke rose in the water. The pieces of iron drifting in the ocean glittered from the sunlight coming from above, and the edge of his rapidly clearing field of view, the sinking shadow of the brutal wreckage could be seen. Paradise sank into deep dark blue darkness, raising a spine-chilling death cry. What do we do from here? Tsugumi asked in a quiet voice. The small egg-shaped vessel holding the two of them headed silently toward the surface. There's so much I want to do, but first, I'm thinking more about where to start. Takeshi spoke as he placed the motionless peepee on the seat next to him. What about you, Tsugumi? What do you want to do? What, you didn't like the question? No, it's not that. Could I have a minute to think about it? Sure. Takeshi smiled. Does that mean we can throw the dog out to de-weight the place? Or do we need both? But that smile would soon fade. A heavy ringing filled the submarine. What? What was that sound? Tsugumi looked at Takeshi worriedly. I don't know. The operating console made a funny sound. What's that noise? No clue. Hey, something just came up on the screen over there. The monitor behind Tsugumi started blinking. What does it say? You're closer than I am. Why don't you turn around and look at it yourself? No. I don't want to see it. I got a really bad feeling about this. Don't be so selfish. Looking like he didn't have any other choice, Takeshi peeked at the monitor. Which one? Low battery. That's what it says. As if responding to what Takeshi said, the lights in the sub suddenly went out. The monitor went dark and all of the power went out. The electrical equipment went silent. The only thing still working was the analog pressure gauge. Present depth, 189 feet. Internal pressure, 12.5 atmospheres. Takeshi? Tsugumi's voice was shaking. It's okay, we're going to be fine. Stop looking like you're going to cry. Depth, 192 feet. Its momentum lost, the submarine began sinking slowly. Very slowly. Residual air pressure, 0. Ballast tank, unable to drain. Wonderful, we're hitched a ride on a junker. You know, this cab always seems to stall on these country roads. I'm terribly sorry, ma'am. Depth, 195 feet. Takeshi looked at the aft hatch. It had a 2-ply hatch. The inner side was made of reinforced glass and FRP, and the other side had a door made from high-strength steel. You think if we let some of the high-pressure gas out of the hatch, we'd start rising again? No. I don't think we'd go straight up and our momentum would be limited. Not to mention the fact that if we do that, we'll start flooding. Because we don't have any more compressed air. And we don't have enough buoyancy in the main fuselage. Buoyancy? We got to get rid of ballast. Ballast? The valve used to release ballast is usually electronically controlled. But now we're... Alright, let's just stay calm. Judging by how fast we're sinking, we're only need to be a little bit lighter, right? If we can get rid of about 100 pounds or so, we should be fine. Let's try pulling out a few of those machines over there. That should make us lighter. You think it's going to be easy? Well, they seem to be welded on fairly good. Probably not easy to do barehanded. And unfortunately, we don't have any tools, so that's it, huh? So give me a bit of lip and look down. Yeah, we're screwed. Depth, 201 feet. They were sinking. Without any electricity, the submarine was just a hunk of metal. Looks like we celebrated too soon. Doesn't it? So stupid. I'm so stupid. Tears began to fill Tsugumi's eyes. Tsugumi raised her voice. A single tear fell, rolling down her cheek. What are you doing, Takeshi? Wait, you can't tell by looking? I'm opening the hatch. That's why I'm asking you. What are you doing? Do you even need to ask? Stop it. What are you planning to do? Tsugumi grabbed onto Takeshi's arm. Don't try to stop me. He threw off Tsugumi's arm and raised up the glass hatch. It was just large enough for one person to go through. Please don't touch me. Don't touch me. No, I won't let you go. Tsugumi grabbed onto Takeshi's arm fiercely. I don't care if I die, I'm not letting go. Depth, 207 feet. They wouldn't stop sinking. Slowly and steadily they fell. Headed for the dark bottom of the ocean. You know, you really are selfish. Hey, Tsugumi. Do you know what the Archimedes principle is? Huh? For that instant, Tsugumi's grip relaxed. In the brief instant, Takeshi tore himself forcefully away from her grasp. He quickly opened the glass hatch and slipped into the back of the airlock. The area between the hatches was extremely cramped. Takeshi closed the glass hatch from the inside and shut the latch right away. They'd passed a depth of 210 feet. Takeshi? Takeshi, can't we throw the dog out? I mean, it's already dead, right? It's a robot. What are you doing? Open it up, get out of there. Tsugumi wildly pounded on the reinforced glass with her fist. Tsugumi, what are you saying? The glass is pretty thick, you know. I really can't hear very well. You stupid idiot, open it up this instant. What are you thinking? Tears started falling from Tsugumi's wide-open eyes. Tsugumi desperately pounded the flat of her tear-covered hand against the glass. Hey, wait a second, didn't you? I thought you knew about the Archimedes principle. I mean, I think you were the one who told me about it. I guess you know then. Sorry about that. It isn't funny, stop joking. It isn't, it's not about that. You fool, Takeshi, you idiot. Tsugumi sobbed as she screamed. Yeah, I'm an idiot. The biggest one there is. You know that, Tsugumi. You didn't know that, Tsugumi? Takeshi put one hand behind him and the other on the hatch and slowly turned the handle. Takeshi? Tsugumi froze in place. No. Do you really want to die? Don't worry. I may be stupid, but I'm not that stupid. On saying this, Takeshi continued to turn the handle on the other side without stopping. Depth, 219 feet. Please, don't leave me. Don't leave me all by myself. There you go, always worrying. Takeshi forced a smile. I keep telling you it's going to be okay, right? Yeah. You want to live, don't you? Yeah. So live. As long as you're alive, live. Don't worry. I'm not going to die. 222 feet. The hatch on the bottom of the submarine opened. The air, which had been compressed in the airlock, was jettisoned into the ocean. Takeshi's body shot out like a bullet into the water. Bubbles flew everywhere. An infinite number of white bubbles floated toward the surface. They seemed like powdery snow caught in the wind. Snow that flew toward the heavens. He could no longer hear her voice. From the other side of the glass, he could make out her blurry outline. Her face covered with tears. Her face was broken with sadness. 225 feet. Takeshi paddled through the water, holding onto the railing. He closed the outside hatch. He couldn't see her anymore. 228 feet. He let go of his last source of support and kicked the sub. Takeshi's body spun out as if it were dancing into a blue world. 231 feet. He sank toward the bottom of the ocean. White bubbles extended out beyond his field of vision, wobbling slowly upwards toward the heavens. Depth, 357 feet. Everything that he could see dissipated into the water. Outlines faded. Nothing came into focus, only light and shadow reflected in his eyes. There was one thing, however, that he could see clearly through the haze. A small white dot swaying in the distance. Dazzling light from the sky, pouring down on him from a single point. As an image burned in both of his eyes. He let out the last gasp of air. Cold seawater poured into his lungs. A blanket of blue darkness covered him in his final resting place. His limbs sprawled out on the rocky ocean floor. Had stopped moving, like a marionette with its strings cut. Dad? Back in the world of 2034, when I returned to consciousness, I was crying. Feelings overcame me in torrents, rushing through me hotly. Dad is dead. The weight of my sadness pressed down on me, and a sense of futility tore a hole in my heart. But it was no time to be overcome by sadness. Wiping the wetness from my cheeks, I looked at my surroundings. A new day was breaking, just as it had been in 2017. Through my tears, the blue sky and ocean came into my vision. It seemed that I was above the floating island. I could analyze the situation calmly, but the tears wouldn't stop. I wiped them away with the palm of my hand and licked the large drops as they rolled past my mouth. Squeezing my eyes shut tightly, I took in deep breaths to calm down. I trembled slightly as I let out a sigh and looked around at my surroundings again. It was definitely above the floating island. The wind was blowing lightly and the green trees were swaying gently. The morning sun was letting out golden rays onto the surface of the ocean. It had been a while since I'd been outdoors. The wide blue sky, the smell of warm, humid breeze. But as beautiful as it seemed, it didn't help me one bit. Rather, the richness of it all made it feel even more alienated. I'm alone, and so terribly sad. I wiped away the tears, which continued to flow, and tried hard to suppress my urge to cry out. Why didn't the other ones get out? I had to think. This was no time to be crying. I shook my head repeatedly and tried with all my strength to collect my atrophied thoughts. Think. First I need to grasp the situation I was in. I followed the threads of my memory. I remembered having gotten safely out of Lamu, but had no memories after that. I had no idea what had happened after that. I couldn't imagine that I'd been standing outside all night. Huh? I suddenly realized that nobody else was there. As I began to walk on the grass, I looked wildly in all directions. Soon, I became aware of one solitary figure. It was Kaburaki. He had his back to a tree trunk and was staring out at the vast ocean. I ran over to him and screamed at him. Why would you do something like this? Answer me. I know everything now. Kaburaki was silent. He wouldn't even look at me. It was obvious that he was the closest person to being responsible for everything happening here. Takeshi Kuranari, my father's name. He'd used this name to deceive us the whole time. I drew even closer. Say something. Don't just stand there. I said say something. I grabbed onto his shirt. I'm sorry, but I can't tell you anything. Kaburaki's eyes were wet. He seemed to be thinking deeply about something as he gazed at me. But I will tell you this. This isn't over, okay? It all starts from here. Yeah, it all starts from right now. I relaxed my grip. Kaburaki didn't say any more, and walked away, gazing in the direction of the distant horizon. I stood there, vaguely staring at his back, while it became smaller and smaller. Somebody tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around and Sora was standing right in front of me. I've been waiting for you. What are you doing here? Only this thought didn't reach my lips. There clearly was no OSD on this floating island, but she just tapped me on the shoulder. I couldn't process the information and stood there gaping in confusion. I reached out to touch Sora's arm absent-mindedly. Her skin was smooth, its texture slightly elastic, and warm to the touch. Come this way. Sora grinned. It was Sora, smiling as always. I felt saved by his smile. I was led by Sora into the forest. A small stone-covered path was overgrown in a deep thicket. The tips of the trees stretched up high, almost entangling one another. Hardly any light squeezed through. There was no breeze here either. The air was wet and everything felt heavy and stagnant. The small stone path sneaked around randomly, and I soon lost all sense of direction as I continued walking. I moved forward along the passage with no exit. For some reason I didn't say a word to Sora, whose back was in front of me. I walked up beside her and interlaced my fingers in hers. I didn't know why I did that. I was just curious. Was I just curious, or had I wanted a sense of security? Sora looked over at me and smiled. Maybe the reason I grabbed onto her was just because I wanted to see her smile at me. Not long afterward, we finally emerged from the forest. My field of view widened and beyond spread out an area of lush green grass and the rich blue ocean. My line of sight was drawn to the back of someone very familiar to me. You was standing right there in the center of the open space, and she was standing with her back to me. And someone else, a woman who looked just like her. They were facing each other and standing still. I braced against the rising tide of emotion within me and went to stand over by them. I flashed to look back. Sora was standing at the entrance to the forest and didn't appear to be coming closer. In the center of that area were you, the lady, and I, the other lady. Of course I knew her name. Tanaka. Yubisei Harukana. She'd been infected with the Kyo virus, and though she seemed quite young, she didn't look quite 17. It was probably since her cells had divided for 5 years, which had caused her to age slightly. In other words, her body was that of a 23-year-old, but she was actually 35. I looked over at you, Yubisei Akikana, standing next to me. She had her hand curled into a fist and was glaring at her mother. She was so mad she was shaking. I realized that the person who had been manipulating everything behind the scenes had been the person standing in front of me, Yubisei Harukana, Yu's mother. She'd been up here safe and sound on the island, relaxing, looking down at our plight, and had probably been laughing the whole time. I glared over it, along with Yuaki. Yuharu appeared indifferent to our stares and said nonchalantly, "Do you have any questions?" I laughed without thinking. What the hell kind of thing was that to say? Why would you do something like this? In order to call forth Blickwinkle. What the hell is Blickwinkle? You already know that, don't you? Blickwinkle? Is you. Me? I'm Blickwinkle. Yes. I'm not talking about Hokuto. I'm talking about the other perspective on the other side of Hokuto. Perspective? Yes. The third eye, Blickwinkle. The you on the other side of Hokuto. That's right, the part of you that is looking at me right now. It is you that I'm talking about. From the beginning, you've been the kid. When you overlapped with Hokuto, you lost his memory and became you. He lost his memory and became you. So it makes sense that he had amnesia. You never lived in this world before. You have no history here, no memories of this place. On May 1st, 2034 at 3:17 PM, you uttered your first words in this world, kid. You aren't from this world. You are looking down at this world from one dimension higher than this. That's why you can see the future and the past. Well, that's not all. You can probably also see other time continuums. The reason the kid could see the future is, you know all there is to know about this world. It only makes sense that you didn't respond to the name Hokuto. I mean, your real name isn't Hokuto, right? So we're a fourth dimensional being. Didn't see that coming, honestly. I mean, all the hallmarks were there, but yeah, I still didn't see it coming. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to lie to yourself. So, show your true self. Answer me truthfully. You aren't really a kid named Hokuto, are you? Who am I? Who are you? I am Hokuto. Who are you? Who am I? You are Hokuto. I'm not Hokuto. I'm not Hokuto, I'm me. I am me. Yes, I remember. I'm me. For so long watching. I am but a perspective, an eye that transcends dimensional boundaries. I am the third eye. I am Blickwinkle. I remember now. I am not from your world, am I? I'm not Hokuto. Sure has been a long time. A long time? No, don't worry about it. Thank you for showing yourself. Why? Please tell me why. Why did you have to do this? I already told you. In order, well, I suppose you could call it a summoning. In order to reach me. Did you really have to do something so reckless and dangerous? Yes. Just as I explained earlier, you've been looking down on our world from your dimension, right? Let's say that there was a conscious being from the second dimension. What do you think that the second dimensional being would have to do in order to make contact with the third dimension? For instance, on an XY plane there are some two-dimensional beings, points A, B, and C. And on the XYZ space, you have a three-dimensional being, point D. Points A, B, and C can only move on an XY axis. So how can they draw to point D then? You have to move point C on the same line as points A and B. When that happens, points A, B, and C form a line and create a common plane with point D, meaning point D becomes part of the same plane as points A, B, and C. When that happens, for the first time, point D has the illusion that it is in the same world as A, B, and C. That's what we did. In creating a world where you couldn't tell if it was 2034 or 2017, point D in other words, we were able to create an illusion that the fourth wall being, the perspective Blickwinkle, was in our same reality. Okay, I get that. That's crazy, but I get it. So repeating it and making it look exactly the same means that you couldn't tell the difference in time, and because time is the fourth dimension that Blickwinkle travels in, if it can't tell the difference, then it's on the same existence. Right? Crazy, but okay, I get that. Carry on. You showed yourself to us, descending in the space in front of us. We were waiting for you. All of us. We've been waiting for you for so long. Why? Why were you waiting for me? What reason could you have to call for me? We just were following your directions. Huh? You called yourself. What do you mean? You needed us and we needed you. Why? In order to save Coco and Takeshi, we needed to borrow your powers. To save Coco and Takeshi? We are powerless to fight the flow of time. There is nothing we can do about the past. But you can. The reason being that someone like you from the fourth dimension can travel freely through time. I saw it then, I saw everything. My consciousness had detached from Hokuto and gone back to the world of 2017. Hokuto's feelings and thoughts hadn't reached me, but our perspectives had overlapped. An observer with no feelings. All I could do was witness events as they passed. The submarine that Tsugumi was on had continued floating up and had already made it to the surface. It was a small white vessel, rocking in the waves. Shut inside the small submarine, Tsugumi's shoulders drooped as she sat in the cockpit in shock. Having lost everything, she sat there spiritlessly, looking empty, like a glass ornament. Just then, the lights came back on and Pee-Pee's eyes, who moments before had been motionless at Tsugumi's feet, he got up quickly. He seemed to be unable to comprehend what was happening. Peepee shook off his body, flashed to look up at Tsugumi's face, walked over to stand in front of the glass hatch. Peepee began pawing at the hatch. What's wrong? Tsugumi mumbled weakly. Bow wow wow. Peepee stood facing the hatch and barked. You want to go outside? Woof. Tsugumi's gaze wandered about as if she were thinking something over. Peepee continued barking the whole time. The submarine rocked gently in the waves. Tsugumi put both hands on the wall and looked outside the window. Okay. Saying that, Tsugumi opened the hatch. Not the glass one, but the heavy one on top of the submarine. A pure white light flashed into the interior of the ship like a sharp edge of a blade. Tsugumi squinted against the brightness. She held up one hand to fend off the light, and with her other, pushed the hatch with all her might. She picked up Peepee and brought him outside of the boat. Peepee kicked hard against the hull to fly into the air, and drawing a beautiful arch, he splashed into the ocean. One mechanical dog swimming in the ocean. Down, down, down he went. He didn't stop at 51 feet, 102 feet, 153 feet, 204 feet, 255 feet, 306 feet, 357 feet. The hard rock surface deepened the blue darkness. A man's body lay in the ocean bed. Peepee bit onto his clothing and pulled. He was trying to bring him somewhere. Of course, the man didn't move at all. Peepee bit on some exposed flesh. The man didn't respond. His life had expired. All that remained there was a cold corpse. Nothing more. Something had fallen to his side. A disc. A terabyte disc. Peepee picked it up in his mouth and left the body behind. He started swimming in the ocean. Going sideways, he cut across the water. At the bottom of the dark sea, there was only a cold surface of the rock and dark black seawater. Occasionally, delicate streams of light would pass by. Perhaps Peepee had found something. Without hesitation, Peepee swam straight toward the white building. The face of a single dog broke the surface of the pool. He stuck out his front legs at the edge and climbed onto the floor. He shook himself off. Small droplets of water flew off in all directions, forming a mist. The terabyte disc was still in his mouth. Peepee ran. He lost his footing on the wet floor, slipped and fell. Standing up again, he readied himself and dashed off at full gallop. His pliant body shot like a coiled spring. Peepee ran down the passage, braking to the right. He turned to the left. He was aiming for something. Peepee? Peepee? Only her voice could be heard. Woof. Peepee barked loudly. The disc fell out of his mouth to spin across the floor with a rattle. Peepee quickly braked with all four legs, turned around to get the disc, and dashed across the floor again. Peepee? Takepion? It's Coco. When he turned the corner, her figure jumped out at him. She was lying down in the middle of the passage. Peepee ran over to her side. He set down the disc on the floor, and biting at her clothes, started pulling on her. He tried desperately to pull her along, but just as he couldn't budge the man before, it was too much for his small frame to budge her. Woof woof woof. Peepee? She opened her eyes weakly. Oh, where did you go? I was so worried about you. Peepee licked her face. Where is everyone? I don't understand when you whine. Peepee pulled on her clothes and scratched her shoulder, grunting with his effort. Woof 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 woof. Perhaps he realized there was nothing he could do, but Peepee barked frantically. Hey Peepee, let's go home. Daddy and Mummy are waiting for us. So, let's go. Go home. Okay, Peepee? She closed her eyes quietly. Bow wow wow. No matter how much he barked at her, she wouldn't open her eyes. Peepee started walking around the area. He finally stopped and picked up a disc that he left on the floor and started running again. Going back the way he came, he made it to the pool. Without hesitating, he threw himself into the pool. He started swimming in the ocean, rising up and up. He didn't stop. 306 feet, 255, 204, 153, yeah, we get it, 0. Peepee's face broke the surface. The blue expanse of the sky loomed above him. The sun had changed the water to a silvery color. Someone was there to pick up Peepee. It was Yu Haru. She took the terabyte disc from his mouth and looked at the digital recording of IBF that Peepee had taken with his eyes. This is the first time she realized the truth. That left behind at the bottom of the ocean in the research facility was a single girl. That girl was Coco. It was Coco Yagami. Yubisei Harukana said, Kaburaki and I, who had been infected by the TB virus, were rescued by the salvage vessel, but Coco wasn't aboard the submarine with us. I was unconscious then, so I hadn't noticed. But I realized it afterwards. Coco had been left behind in IBF. I can't believe it. This is Incel Null Control. Please respond. This is examination room in IBF 3. Over. Thank goodness that's where you were. A little while ago we got a message from dispatch team they couldn't find you. You had us worried there. I'm sorry, I was out for a bit. We were able to rescue the other 3 people in the examination room. and they're being cared for in the salvage vessel. Is everyone okay? Can't say for sure, their conditions are serious. We're fighting against time. The submersible is going to surface soon, and we'll transfer them to a floating medical center. Okay, you take care of them. The control center said they'd rescued the other 3 people in the examination room, so why? Those 3 people were me, Kaburaki, and one more, my father, Yoichi Tanaka. I thought he was already dead though. Why? Why'd the rescue team leave Coco there? I heard it from them afterwards, but they said they couldn't find her. Oh, I remember. By the time the rescue squad got there, Coco wasn't in the examination room. I don't know why, but for some reason Coco had gotten out of the capsule pod. So the only people left there were you, Kaburaki, and Mr. Tanaka, who was already dead. Yeah. You and Kaburaki's conditions were extremely serious. So they put the highest priority on saving the lives of those 2, and the rescue squad left. Meaning they overlooked Coco. No, they abandoned her. You pinched her eyes shut, her face distorted in sadness. What do you want me to do? By the time these words left my mouth, I'd already returned to 2017. To that vast blue world. On the bottom of the ocean lay the cruelly broken body of a man. It didn't move. What do you want me to do? I'm not from this world. The only thing I can do is look. Just look on. You wanted to show me this dead body? It makes me sad. Terribly sad. He'd thrown his life away to protect the woman he loved. It was heartbreaking. His body had lost all warmth. I kept staring. Just then... Dad? 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 My awareness split, broke, fractured as a powerful force of will woke up inside me. I was infused with an overwhelming passion. Hakuto's indomitable belief, willpower, emotions, and psyche were like a raging inferno that engulfed me. This ferocious and wild power raging within me and superseded my existence. It exploded in a shower of white sparks of light and roared like thunder. Overwhelmed by the raw vigor, I withdrew. There was no place for me to be. Hakuto exploded with bottled up emotions and threw his instinctive power free into the darkness. Dad, don't you die on me. Please don't die. I still haven't met you yet. Please don't leave me, Dad. Sarah and I are waiting for you. Mama's waiting for you. Please don't leave her sad. Help us. You promised, you said I'm not going to die, no matter what, right? You swore you wouldn't even let one person die. Coco is still in the research facility. If you don't do something, she's going to die. Dad? Dad? Takeshi opened his eyes. At the bottom of the seabed, under unbearable pressure, he regained consciousness. How many minutes had it been since he last breathed? He was undeniably alive. He had revived. I'm not going to die, I promised her. I could hear the screams of his mind in my ears. Takeshi flipped over his body, kicking off the reef and began to swim. He cut the water with his arms and kicked with his legs, continuing to swim wildly through the water. The water pressure didn't faze him, and his body felt no resistance. He moved forward in the darkness as if he were skating on ice. Bubbles trailed on an arc behind him. He maintained an unthinkable speed, tearing apart the wall of water in front of him. His only source of guidance was a faint light visible ahead. As momentum carried him flying out of the water, Takeshi pushed his face out of the water, racked by a fit of violent coughing, and spewed out seawater from his lungs. He clung to the edge of the pool, sucking in deep breaths of air. He would partly take in breath, only to throw up massive amounts of water. He repeated this many times. When the painful fits had finally died down, Takeshi laid exhausted, like the dead. Truth be told, he probably had been dead. Takeshi crawled along the floor. He flipped over on his back with a thud. He couldn't move. The sound of his heavy breathing echoed off the walls. Dad? Dad, hang in there. Hakuto called out. Takeshi laughed. I don't know who the heck you are, but don't call me Dad. Dad? I'm telling you, I don't have any kids. But I'm your son. Okay, then who's your mum? Tsugumi. Tsugumi is. Laughing isn't going to change anything. But there's no way you're going to believe me. Because I'm talking to you 17 years from the future. 17 years? That'd make it 2034, right? By the way, where are you? I can't see you anywhere. I'm close by you. Takeshi peeled himself off the floor where he'd been lying and rose slowly. He looked all around. Even if you look for me, I don't think you can see me. I'm only looking at you, Dad. I don't have a clue what you're talking about, but my body isn't in your time. And it isn't like I'm using a speaker to see my words to you. I'm connected to your mind, talking to you. Takeshi put his finger in his ears and wiggled it. I must be hallucinating this. I wonder if I'm... No, you don't have time for this. We don't have time to waste. Oh yeah, you mentioned earlier about Coco and the research facility, right? That's right. Coco didn't get in one of the submersibles. The man from the rescue squad who told you about the survivors, he was talking about you, Kaburaki, and the researcher. The researcher's not a survivor. He was already fucking dead when they picked him up. You gotta be joking. You gotta go back and check the research facility one more time. Koko's still in there. Takeshi hurried down the corridor. The research facility was almost entirely silent. The only sound was the echo of Takeshi's shoes against the floor. The corridor wound left and right. He searched around, but he didn't find any signs of anyone. Hey, I don't see anyone. It's impossible. I'm telling you, she's gotta be there somewhere. Takeshi tilted his head a bit quizzically. Well, I suppose I should thank you. If you hadn't woken me up saying something stupid like Dad, I probably would have drowned. Are you alright? What do you think? Just think about everything that has happened to me in the last few hours, will you? It started with getting TF Blau, I got decompressed, recompressed, and pumped up with Segumi's antibodies, and finally ended with getting sucked out into the bottom of the sea and practically drowning. Well, I guess I did kind of throw myself out there, but in spite of all that, you seem to be doing alright to me. Well, I suppose Segumi's antibodies must have kicked in, or maybe the effects of the cure virus have already started. There's no way his DNA could be rewritten so quickly. But that might be another explanation for why Takeshi recovered so quickly from jumping in the water. I've no way of knowing. It doesn't matter though. Looks like he's a lot better after walking around for a while. He looks strong even. Takeshi walked down the passageway on steady legs. He came to an intersection. Checking quickly to the left and right, he set down the path to the left. It was right after that. Wait a sec. Did something just move right now? Without waiting for Hokuto's reply, Takeshi started running. Koko? Koko had fallen down in the corridor. Takeshi rushed over to Koko and lifted up her motionless body. Takepion? Koko spoke firmly. What are you doing here? Well, Pee-Pee wasn't, I couldn't find him and so I went looking for him. It appeared that Koko had gotten out of the pod by herself before the rescue squad had arrived and had got off looking for Pee-Pee. You're the most totally... Takeshi shook his head dumbfounded. Koko looked innocently at the exasperated Takeshi and said the following words. Hey, is everyone else still sleeping? That was all Koko could say before she passed out. The next instant, a loud explosion shook the walls of IBF. The sound came from up above. The falling wreckage of Lamu had probably collided with the roof of the research facility. Paradise was still collapsing, it seemed. Takeshi quickly scooped up to Koko's body and dashed across the floor. Kicking up his feet, Takeshi screamed to the void. Hey, what am I supposed to do? Can't you escape by swimming through the pool? Hokuto answered. Idiot. It's 357 feet under the water down here. Koko and I won't be able to hold our breath that long. Besides, in order to surface, we have to decompress slowly as we go up. There's 12.5 atmospheres down here, and the ocean surface is 1 atmosphere. There's no way we can survive unless we get ourselves decompressed. How about the elevator? It's been cut off. The elevator tubes were destroyed a long time ago. There's no way to go up. Well, let's go to the examination room. I know that. Takeshi ran into the examination room. He hit the control panel and closed the door. Strangely, there was no sign of flooding inside IBF. There was no sound of running water and the tremors had stopped for the time being. There was still no time to relax. Koko's body was fast reaching its limit. Takeshi laid Koko down on the bed. He ran toward the side of the desk at the corner of the room. He'd opened one of the storage bins and grabbed something. It was the antibodies for the TF Blau taken from Tsugumi. Koko hadn't been inoculated with it yet. Without a word, Takeshi gave Koko the antibodies. Koko had long passed the stage of suffering and lay there looking limp. Come on, do the trick. Takeshi threw the empty syringe away and held onto Koko's hand as she lay there. A while had passed, but Koko's condition didn't seem to be improving. As a matter of fact, it seemed to be getting worse. Oh, come on, why isn't it working? Takeshi banged on the wall. Koko was infected a few days earlier than you did, so her disease has been progressing for that much longer than everyone else. Damn it, we can't just sit here and wait. Besides, we've got to find a way to escape. I just need to think of something. Why don't we pressurize the pods with oxygen for the oxygen treatment, and then float the pods to the surface? Or something. Takeshi paced around the room with his head down. Occasionally heavy noises echoed from the ceiling. Takeshi listened to the noises, and then Takeshi, looking as if he just realized something, whispered to himself, I heard an announcement earlier before Tsugumi and I escaped. The announcement said something like, if you're not out in a few minutes, you're going to be crushed. But this place is still standing. Why is that? I don't know why either. But maybe what? That announcement might have been about Lamu imploding. But think about it. This laboratory has been built so that that the atmosphere on the inside and outside are equal. Since they're still balanced, it probably won't implode as easily. That must have been it. If you leave the cap on an empty plastic bottle, even when you come back years later, the air will still be trapped inside, which means that the laboratory should be safe, unless extreme force was added from somewhere. Yeah, in theory, because they're separate, the only way that the laboratory would be destroyed is if shit from Lemieux landed on it and broke it open. Such as a giant piece of partition from Lemieux falling on it, yeah. Although he didn't seem to be fully convinced, Takeshi nodded upon hearing Hokuto's explanation. By accepting the explanation, he was probably trying to clear one of the many problems facing him at the moment. As time progressed, Koko's condition got worse and worse. Damn it, why is this all happening? Why? Why? Takeshi kicked the wall. Well, Dad, you should have given her the antibody earlier. Huh? It's a little late for that now, isn't it? Besides, Koko was in the pod under pressure at that time. You couldn't just open the lid. You could have given her a shot without opening the lid. Because you said, it seems that the pod can do laser disinfection as well as simple surgery in addition to the oxygen treatment. And depending on how you use it, even cryogenic suspension. Since it has so many other functions, it probably should be able to give an injection. But you didn't say a word about being able to give shots without opening the lid, did she? And if she didn't mention it, it mustn't be possible. Besides, neither you nor I have any idea what this device can do. What's cryogenic suspension anyway? It's like hibernation. Hokuto answered as if anyone would know. Hibernation? Yeah, everyone would know. You mean like bears do in the winter? Kind of, yeah. I'm pretty sure that cryogenic suspension means you can artificially induce hibernation. It keeps the human body temperature low, around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and reduces your heartbeat and breathing to the absolute minimum. That way it increases your metabolic efficiency and conserves as much energy as possible. I see. Hey, I wonder why they have it here. In the middle of saying this, Takeshi stopped suddenly. At the same time, Hokuto's thoughts stopped too. And then, they screamed out at the same time. I got it, we'll put her in cryogenic suspension. I've got it, we can put her in cryogenic suspension. If it's her body temperature that's kept low, it'll slow down the rate of the virus infection too, right? Yeah. Alright, all we need now is a little more time. If we have that time, I'm sure it'll work. If we can slow down the virus even for a minute, or a second, it'll be better than nothing. Alright then. Takeshi carried the frail Koko and set her in the pod. Then he started flipping through the manual at full speed, skimming it. Didn't seem difficult to set up. Takeshi, unlike his usual self, manipulated the computer terminal swiftly and smoothly. Then, all that was left was to turn on the switch. Koko was asleep in the pod. Takeshi reached out his hand to the switch that would close the lid. A split second before he flipped the switch, Koko quietly opened her eyes. Who's that? What? Who's standing behind you, Takepion? Behind me? Takeshi looked back. Hokuto was there. Can you see him, Koko? Yeah, I do. Koko, it's me, Hokuto. Hokuto? Hokuto is your name. Can I call you Hokutan? The Koko of this time didn't seem to know Hokuto yet. So, who was the phantom girl that I've been seeing? Hokuto. Is that your name? Uh-huh. Really? Koko? I can't see him, but this guy Hokuto helped us, you know. Hokutan. Thank you. And the other person, you. Thank you. Other person? Someone else? Yeah, there is. I can see him, behind Hokutan. Are you talking about me? Is this a fourth wall break? Silence filled the room. It is definitely a fourth wall break. The room temperature felt suddenly lower for some reason. Koko? Koko was looking at me. Just me. Into my eyes. Are you talking about me? Feeling flustered, I gathered up my courage and spoke. Yes, you. We finally meet? Huh? I don't know Hokutan, but I sure know you. Because all this time you've been watching over me, haven't you? Mr. Fourth Dimension. Black Winkle. Let's play chicks sometime again. We go Pio Pio, Pio Pio. Koko, I was the one... Koko's cheeks eased up a little. I don't think you knew it, Takepion, but... I didn't just play with you, I was also playing with him. Huh? Isn't that right? Koko was asking me. Uh-huh. I might have been watching over Koko for all this time. I've been watching over you. I wanted to get closer to you too. But it was probably not possible. So you're like the one who told me that you liked me then? Yes, I suppose it was. Suppose it was. Koko and I looked at each other. We were staring at each other, our eyes filled with passion. I felt as though my existence would evaporate any second. What's going to happen to me? All of a sudden, a dark shadow covered Koko's eyes. Am I going to die? Don't be silly, there's no way you're going to die. No matter what, I'll save your life, Coco. I won't let you die. Excitedly, I appealed to her. Although she looked to be in some pain, Coco smiled at me happily. My heart seemed that it would surely melt. Coco, so that's how it is, okay? We're gonna save you no matter what. So just relax. I want you to rest now. As he was saying this, Takeshi went to close the pod. Wait, what's gonna happen? You're gonna sleep for a while? Just like a cuddly bear. No, please don't leave me. Don't go anywhere. Don't leave me alone. We're not gonna leave you alone, will we? We're gonna stay right here. You're lying. I don't believe you. Quit being so stubborn. If we leave you like this, you're gonna... No. I don't want to. I don't want to be all by myself. I'll be too lonely. I'm scared. I'm so scared. Takeshi, will you lie down and sleep next to me? There's no way. This pod is... Takeshi stopped in the middle of what she was saying. He looked at the ceiling, then to the monitor on the wall, and finally to the pod next to Coco. Right, how about this then? I'll sleep in the pod next to you. How's that? You won't be lonely anymore, right? Coco looked back and forth between Takeshi and me. She had a worried look on her face, and stared at us with eyes that seemed about to burst into tears. Really? You aren't lying? Of course not. You promise? You won't leave me and go? I wouldn't do that, of course I won't go. Alright then. I trust you, Takeshi. That's a good girl. Takeshi petted Coco's head. Okay, I'm gonna close it now, okay, Coco? Uh-huh. Takeshi turned on the switch. The lid of the pod slowly went down. Hey, before I go to sleep, will you listen to my request? Request? I wasn't talking to you, Takeshi. Coco's eyes were pointing towards me. Me? Yes. Well, I want to see you. What? I want to see you again. I want to see you and talk with you more. Uh-huh. I think that I might just... It's just that Oh. I can't say it. But will you promise me? That you and I will see each other again someday? Yes. I'll be waiting. I'll wait for you no matter what. You'll come get me? Promise? Yes, I promise. The space between the lid and the pod itself was almost gone. I could barely see Coco through the narrow slit. Coco faced towards me and whispered one last thing in her tiny voice. Oh, good night, brother. Brother? Before I could say anything in reply, the lid had closed. The sound of compressed air filled the room. The low whir of the motor. With a light metallic ring, the pod shut completely. Takeshi pushed another switch attached to the pod's chassis. The cryogenic suspension function was activated. There were small sounds, as though gas were leaked out. The pod slowly cooled down, humming with a slight vibration. Well then. Hey, Something Winkle, you still there? What is it, Dad? Oh, it's you, Hokuto. You guys are confusing me. You and that Winkle guy are two different people, right? Or are you from the 4th dimension too, Hokuto? No, I'm just borrowing his perspective for now. Really? I mean, I don't get it at all, but I don't suppose it matters. Saying this, Takeshi sunk his body into an empty pod. The pod next to Coco's. What, Dad, what are you gonna do? What do you think? There's nothing else I can do, right? I made her a promise, you know. So you're gonna... Yep, that's right. Doesn't look like there's any way to escape anyway. We just have to wait for the second rescue team to arrive. Well, it'll just be a waste of energy to wait here doing nothing, so I might as well go to sleep. Dad, wait a second. No, I'm tired. I'm really tired. Takeshi stretched his arm from where he lay and flicked the switch for both closing the lid and starting the cryogenic suspension at the same time. The lid started to close, quietly, steadily. Alright, Hokuto. Counting on you. Dad? Oh hey, one more thing. Quit calling me Dad, will you? Well, I can't help it. I'm your son. No, that's not what I mean. If you call me Dad, why don't you say it a little more elegantly? Call me Father, okay? Father. You got it? Hokuto took a deep breath, trying to say something. But before he could say it, the lid of the pod had shut. A familiar hissing sound echoed in the room. The cryogenic suspension had been activated. The pod cooled down with small vibrations. Just in case, Hokuto and I checked the monitor. The cryogenic suspension in the two pods was functioning properly. There were no signs of abnormality in the bioscans of Coco and Takeshi. The world in 2017, a laboratory lay at the bottom of the ocean. All that remained there was a perspective. Hokuto and I started to think, oh yeah, we gotta let everyone know that Coco and Takeshi are here in IBF. I'm not sure whether it was I or Hokuto who thought this. Maybe it was because we'd switched places so often that the boundary between Hokuto and myself became very vague. Our consciousness had gotten muddy, tangled and intertwined. We were close to a state of fusion. Or maybe we might have been that way ever since the beginning. My thoughts were the same as Hokuto's, and Hokuto's thoughts were the same as mine. Being me, being Hokuto, wasn't all that different. My thoughts were the same as Hokuto's, and Hokuto's thoughts were the same as mine. Being me, being Hokuto, wasn't all that different. My thoughts were the same as Hokuto's, and Hokuto's thoughts were the same as mine. Being me, being Hokuto, wasn't all that different. My thoughts were the same as Hokuto's, and Hokuto's thoughts were the same as mine. Being me, being Hokuto, wasn't all that different. My thoughts were the same as Hokuto's, and Hokuto's thoughts were the same as mine. Being me, being Hokuto, wasn't all that different. My thoughts were the same as Hokuto's, and Hokuto's thoughts were the same as mine. Being me, being Hokuto, wasn't all that different. My thoughts were the same as Hokuto's, and Hokuto's thoughts were the same as mine. Being me, being Hokuto, wasn't all that We had once been one since long ago and would continue to be one. That thought went through my mind, but it wasn't the time to be engrossed in such thoughts. Is that kind of like when Sora told us about if you met the you in the other, if you were a fourth dimensional being and you met the you from your other timelines, you would become one and experience the memories from all timelines? Yeah, I think that's what it is. This fourth dimensional being is Hokuto from the fourth dimension. That thought just went through my mind, but it wasn't the time to be engrossed in such thoughts. Our consciousness flew up into the floating island. A miniature submersible was floating on the ocean surface, swaying in the waves and being teased along by time. It left a carefree trail in the deep blue ocean. I searched inside of it, but Tsugumi had already disappeared. He must be somewhere on the floating island. I expanded my sight and looked down at the entire artificial island. I saw someone, but it wasn't Tsugumi. It was Yubisei Harukana. Hokuto and I flew down near his side. Walking along with Yubisei Harukana was Pipi. He was soaking wet, which meant it hadn't been right after you had picked Pipi from the ocean surface. She was walking down the trail, attended by a few men who seemed to be staff members of Lemo. She was walking toward a helicopter. She was probably on her way to a large hospital or something. She looked surprisingly healthy. She was walking steadily without support. Although she seemed in a dark mode, at least her health seemed fine. The antibodies must have worked, just like with Takeshi. Anyway, I needed to tell her what had happened to Takeshi and Coco. You! It was Hokuto who shouted at her. Who was it? Caught off guard, she glanced all around. The staff members darted skeptical looks at her, and she started talking to herself all of a sudden. It's me! Who is this me? There's no way she could have known Hokuto. Hokuto hadn't even been born in this world. And she wouldn't have believed us if we'd told her that we were talking to her from 17 years in the future. Hokuto told her, "Look, there's something I want to tell you, so listen to me carefully." Actually, Hokuto told her that Coco and Takeshi had been left in the laboratory and that they were under cryogenic suspension in the pods. Oh my god, it can't be. So we're telling her now this because that's why she called us. Because we're telling her this so that she can call us in the future to save them to tell her this. Great. Oh my god, it can't be. So you have to help them right away, okay? Are you serious? Totally. Coco and Takeshi went on the sub that rescued you. And the only ones who were rescued were Tsugumi and Kaburaki. Bow wow. Pipi looked at Hokuto and me and gave a loud bark. Oh yeah, Pipi. Pipi had a disc in his mouth, didn't he? Uh-huh, you mean the terabyte disc, right? That's right. Sora's data and her memories are in it. What else? Wait a minute. What on earth are you now? Where on earth are you now? It doesn't really matter. You have to believe me. How am I supposed to do that? What is this? Am I hearing things? No, you're not. Seriously, Takeshi and Coco are... Wow. Pipi started barking again. Oh, I know. Pipi must have seen it. Pipi saw Coco collapse in the hallway. There's got to be some image of that saved in Pipi's memory. Can you play it back? She dropped her head down as if deep in thought, closed her eyes and massaged her temples with her fingertips. After seeming distressed in this manner for a while, she must have reached a conclusion. You looked up in a different direction and spoke. Alright. I've no clue who you are, but I'll see what I can do. Thank you, you. I'm counting on you. It's about time I get back to where I came from. Where did you come from? You wouldn't believe me, but it's 17 years in the future.